Hello, welcome back to Change Person. I hope that my English day after day, when you watch more episodes, you recognize and give me some encouragement. I'm improving, but I am so excited because of that show. I continue, and including my husband, we continue meet a lot amazing story that Jesus written the testimony in their life. And we heard a lot. And every time we are strengthened and refreshing. I hope that you have the same way. And so you have the great expectation. And I hear today that another testimony, another person that Jesus changed. And that is my new girlfriend, Marsha.
Hi, welcome to my house. I'm so glad you finally came over.
Yeah, I'm so excited. When you told me you have the two puppy, I think, okay, big one or small one?
Yeah, two small ones, and they're in the library, and they're being great. They're not barking or anything, which is a miracle.
Yeah, the presence of Jesus, right?
Right.
You might miss that. We have the presence of Jesus. I hope you do. And one thing is Marsha is the second mayor I interview. The first one is the mayor of Salem, Cindy. And
Cindy.
Yeah, today is Marsha is the mayor of Water. And in Ohio, I am very excited.
Yeah.
And people say when they take picture with celebrity, they collecting stamp like I collecting another kind of stamp.
Yeah. Hey, I'll introduce them all to you.
Thank you. Okay, you were more excited when you hear that, right? So now I want to ask, and because our life is so important, is without Christ and with Christ is so different. It's a key to living life. And before, do you actually? I want to ask because most of friend I have here, and they know Jesus when they born. They say, "Oh, my parent is a Christian." How about you?
Well, I grew up with a two-parent household. My mom took us kids to church every Sunday, Pentecostal, in the city. So it was pretty wild, and I loved it as a kid. You know, you want to jump around and raise your arms and just have a lot of fun. So we did. I've always known that God was present in my life. I always known that He was there. As a toddler, I was in the hospital a lot with really bad asthma. My mom would reach out to God, and we received healing and stuff. So I always knew about God. Then I hit my teenage years. And I tell you, you couldn't pay me to be a teenager again. It is tough, and it's even harder now. But I remember, I had an older brother, a younger sister. I was the middle child. I remember going to high school and junior high, I'm in sports. I'm in the class president. You join all these clubs and all these sports, trying to fill that spot in you, trying to feel where your niche is or what you're good at or making friends. I think that was the most important thing, was just making friends. And I had a handful of very close friends that lived in my neighborhood too. But every time I would join something, I was never great at any one thing. I had a great sense of humor. So, which shows you, I was the captain of the basketball team. Yeah, just over 5 feet. And I was the captain of the basketball team. Not that I was good, but just, I was able to gather everybody together and had a good time. I don't think we won a game, but, so I had that humor that brought people together. But when you get into high school, they take the best, the top 10 of the sports people, or in the academics, you had to be really smart to get into courses or know things. And I grew up stuttering. I had a stuttering problem, and it still comes out every once in a while. So extremely shy, and that's where I used humor a lot. And, when people say to make friends, you just be yourself. Well, it's true. You want to be yourself. You want people to get to know you. But things changed when I got into high school, because I had some sports friends. I had some academic friends. I had friends that did drugs, and played with it a little bit. We would go to parties and have those red cups, with beer. I hated the taste of beer, but I would have the cup. But I remember, Korea, one party I went to. I was 15, and we're all drinking, although I hate the taste of beer, so I wasn't drinking. I remember hearing that the weekend before, some kids drove home from a party, got in a car accident, and died. It wasn't from our school, it was from another school. But you know how all the schools, they know what's going on in each other's schools. And I remember thinking at that party, is this what my life is supposed to be? Going to parties weekend after weekend and getting to know people and not seeing them again. And I just wasn't happy with it. And I remember hanging out with my friends that did drugs. Now, this was in 9th grade. So I always felt I had a protection, God's protection. My brother was a wrestling champion, so they all knew my brother. So I knew nothing was going to happen to me. But I remember going over to a friend's house, and my buddies are sitting around, and I'm just thinking, we're not doing anything. We're not accomplishing anything. We're not doing anything. I want more. And at that time, I was going to a youth group. And it was the church that we were going to. We were going to a different church at that time, New Covenant Christian Church. And it was in a big, huge building that used to be a public school, turned into a private school, a Christian school. And they had youth group every Friday night. And I remember I would go because the cute boys were there. And a friend of mine would go there. And so we would go. And I remember listening to the message and seeing the guys sharing their life and sharing their hopes. And it's like there was something there. And I knew it was God. I knew of him. I knew the power of him. But I wasn't quite ready to submit to him. Because I just didn't know where my friends were at. I didn't know where my path was going. And I remember going to a youth group weekend, a sleepover weekend. And that is where I accepted Jesus in my heart. And it was such a simple prayer, just asking Jesus in my heart, believing in him. And it was a done deal. And I remember sleeping that night thinking, well, I don't feel any different. What's going to happen next? Are my friends going to change? Am I going to change? And I remember going home and they said, Marsha, tell your mom that you accepted Jesus. And I was so afraid to do that. But I was just like, I don't care. I don't care. So I told my mom, and she was all excited and hugged me and stuff. And that was a really touching moment. And I remember that weekend when I was gone, my mom had painted my room because it was my brother's room. So she painted up the room and put beautiful curtains. It was the walls were the most beautiful green I have ever seen. And I still remember that. And it was like, so, and now I'm just realizing I had a change in my heart, but I also had a change at home. And it was good. So I went to school thinking, nothing would change. And, nothing really did change. Although I felt I didn't want to be a part of what I was a part of. My drug friends, who are good people, I didn't want to be a part of that. It's like they weren't going anywhere. They had no hope, no goals. And my sports people, they're fine. I still play sports, played tennis in high school. But to me, they were all snooty, and it's like I didn't fit in anywhere. And I remember my social studies teacher, he had a Bible on his desk. And I said, "You got a Bible on your desk?" And he says, "Yep." I said, "Cool." And it was just an opening, it's like, that's okay to be a Christian. And so that year, it was a tough year, my freshman year in school, being a Christian, not wanting to be a part of what I was a part of, not feeling complete in those areas. I continued to go to the youth group, for the boys. But I tell you what, you couldn't make me do anything I didn't want to do. I went because there was substance there. There was quality there. There was life there. And I wanted it. So they knew that I was a new Christian and stuff. And they just welcomed me in. And it was like, I don't know. It was like a family, like a long lost family. Mm-hmm. And so I would go every Friday night. And I remember coming home and asking my parents if I could go to the Christian school. And, they prayed about it. It was expensive, my parents both worked, but they felt that was really necessary. If I continue with the public school, I don't think I would amount to anything. I know I wouldn't amount to anything because the schools, you had to be a part of something to be anything. And there's nothing great to be a part of. But because my parents saw the need for me to be a Christian in the Christian school, and it was amazing. And it was so funny because my mom even jokes about today how I wore a dress every single day. We didn't have uniforms, but I wore a dress every day, wore heels every day. And that's who I was. That's who I want people to see. I was serious about school. I was serious about my life and my Christian walk. And there were so many opportunities when you become a Christian and you get into groups like that. There's so many opportunities because you meet so many different, it's like everybody goes to a different church. Everybody has different jobs. And so there was so much available to me. And in fact, I graduated with a class of 12. Wow. And I tell you what, the majority of them are physicists and managers and just really top on the totem pole. They're really smart, intelligent people. One is a professor, Christian history professor, and we text each other every once in a while. But I look at my life, and after high school, I went to California to a missionary school. I didn't think I wanted college. I wasn't really great in anything. But the missionary school did drama on the beaches, Christian drama.
Wow.
And I loved it. I loved it. And talking about Jesus to these strangers was amazing because it didn't matter if they knew or didn't know. I was going to share Jesus to them. And you think about, oh my goodness, on the beaches in California. Well, nowadays it's very, very different than 40 years ago. I remember leading a lady to the Lord and bringing her back to school to take a shower, get cleaned up and stuff like that. So those doors opened up with other areas. So I got to do a lot, going to the missionary school, doing a lot of drama. I had a television show, just doing what you were doing, what you're doing. And it was great. I love that. But now after my family's grown, my husband working, I'm working, we have a house, everything's settled. I've been really touched with the Lord, I would say about 5 years ago, really pushing and praying with my patients and being a servant. You know, I have books in my office about how to be a servant, to be a leader, you need to be a servant. And that's exactly what Jesus did. I mean, he came to the earth to serve us, not to get the government straightened out, not to show you that you're doing wrong. He came to earth to love us and to give us hope. And I think that's the thing that is very hard to find nowadays is hope. I have depression. I take medication. And there are times that it gets really difficult finding that hope with the news going on. And I'm in politics. I understand what's going on. I understand what's going on in all the towns around me. And it's scary. And if I didn't have the Lord, if I didn't have that cushion of peace to go to, I don't know what I would do. I don't think I would be here because thoughts of suicide does go in my head. And it's like a battle in my head. And I have to stand on God's promises. The he that is in me is greater than he is in the world. And thank God I have a Christian husband. And I go to an amazing church in Lisbon, Assembly of God in Lisbon with Greg Pennington. And the people there are closer to me than my own family. I know that if I need anything, I could text somebody or I could call. And there's times I would get up in church and just say, I'm struggling this week. And they are there not to point the finger, not to say, you're no good, get your act together. No, they're there to support me, to build me up. And to bring God's peace. So it's amazing. When you become a Christian, you're accepting a life that God wants to give to you. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy, but it absolutely means that he's not going to leave you. He's always there through the hard times, through the good times. I always have this thing where if I'm driving and a street light goes off, it's like God saying, I love you. It's just that little, remember me kind of thing. And when I'm driving, I always imagine Jesus sitting by my side. My mom, growing up, she always said, don't you do anything. Or she would say, just think if you're going to do something that Jesus is right by you. Would you want him to see what you're doing? It's like, whoa, I don't know about that. but it kept me in check because you could go off and do whatever. But if you're not walking with Christ, you're not going to have that completeness, that fulfillness. And there are times I had really difficult times, especially in my marriage. Oh my goodness. And you don't know this. We were married for about 10 years. Our son was 5 years old, living in this house. We moved to Ohio, but his family's from Ohio. So we decided to move to Ohio to live on one income so I could bring up our son. Well, my husband grew up, he's one of 11 children. And there was a lot of violence, a lot of physical discipline in that home. And so we got into arguments and my husband became violent towards me. And it was for a good 2 or 3 years. And I think that chain of violence continued on to my husband, who is, you would never imagine him lifting a hand to anyone. But we struggled at that time, and I actually left him. If you're getting abused, you need to get out of that situation. You need to get help. And nowadays, there is help out there if you're being abused, especially us women. And I was able to go to a school, a home with our son, and continue to go to school. I wanted to be a dental hygienist. So I was already in school. And during that time of being separated from my husband, I continued to go to church. I continued to have that communication with my church family. I continued to rely on the Lord. And that's the only way I got out of that situation. Now, my husband lived here because I had moved out. I never talked bad about him to our son. I really tried to, even though my heart broke because this was the love of my life. So Robert also reached out to the church and he got help for his violence. And I'm not saying it was all him. I knew what buttons to push. I knew how to get him upset. I knew what to say. So it wasn't all him. But again, you don't ever raise a hand to somebody else. You just don't. And I remember when I finished school, I really felt that we were supposed to get back together. And so I told Robert that. And he said, Marsha, I don't love you. I can't find that. I said, I understand. I said, let's go to church together. Let's be together and God will find that love in us. Because there's a lot of hurt that needed to be healed. I mean, when you're abused, you feel lower than dirt. And you don't want to be around. You just don't want to exist anymore. But I have my 5-year-old. So we did go to church and it took a while. I would say probably 6 months to a year before Robert really came around and said, I love you. Now, we don't talk about the past. You know, us women, we always want to talk about things. We always want to fix things. But it was okay. I knew there was a peace there. Robert had that peace. And we went to church, and he now has great church family men that share things with him. He's not being a husband by himself. He's not being a man by himself. I'm not being a wife by myself. I'm not being a woman by myself. We are a family of Christians. That's why we call each other brothers and sisters, because Amen. There is something so strong with us, and that's Jesus.
Yes, amen. You know, one thing I want, I continue enjoying your sharing, and then one thing I would say, because when you are young, you like you say, oh, I am a basketball captain, and I become the president group, and then I think you will say one very simple thing. The Bible say, when you delight in the Lord, He will respond the desire of your heart. Do you ever thought about, actually, when I was young, when you was young, when you were young, and that is what you want to do. That is one, you have that Roy, you say, you want to feel it, and that is a satisfaction. And now you are a mayor, and you graduate what you are studying.
I'm a hospice nurse,
Yeah.
and I'm going to school to be a chaplain. The mayor of Rogers, and I love the people here in Rogers. I love walking around and getting to meet them and know them and serve them, bring them food or make sure their driveway is cleaned out. So God's always fulfilled the desires of my heart, even when I was a teenager. But now the desires of my heart is more in serving people. And that is instilled by God. And you know what? I'm not shy anymore. I don't stutter like I used to. I still have a sense of humor. I don't swear. I don't drink or things like that. And I have a great life. I have a wonderful marriage. We've been married for 35 years now. And without God, I would have none of it.
Yeah. When the closing, I want to ask you one thing is, if you need to make a very strong statement, like you say, you know Christ, your teenager turn away and then coming back for more strongly, but the most official change to you, what is that? And before you really have that relationship with Jesus, up to the point you say, okay, I surrender to you. What the most changing you have?
I think it was when my husband and I were separated. I just laid it on the line. I didn't care anymore. I needed to be whole. And I knew only God could fill that emptiness inside. Only God could fix it.
Amen. So today we are so thankful to hear the whole story from Marsha. And like she said, the most important thing is she recognized from all the up and down, from the time she have the desire and to become the desire fulfilled. One thing she recognized, the most important is you needed to have Jesus in your life. And right?
Yes.
That is the most important. Special, He walked through with you in your low and in your high, in your good time and in your bad time. So today, I want you to be encouraged and remember that and follow Jesus, and your life will be changing too. And even your childhood dream, the Lord knows, and He will satisfy you by delight to Him, and He will respond your desire. Thank you very much, and thank you, Marsha. See you next time.